G'day, I'm Scott Phillips, the Motley Fool's Chief Investment Officer in Australia. And welcome, I would say welcome back, but it's been a while, to a feature we used to do regularly on both our podcast, Motley Fool Money, and of course on the Motley Fool Australia's YouTube channel, that is Stocks in Focus. We go to one of our star analysts and talk about a company that they have been looking at, not necessarily a buy or sell recommendation, just a bit of a rundown of the business. Maybe it's a company you've heard of, maybe you haven't. Maybe it's something new or maybe something in the news. But that is Stocks in Focus. Now, as I said, we're not going to give you a formal recommendation here, so just keep that in mind. The other thing I do need to let you know is the Motley Fool is licensed only to provide general financial advice. What does that mean? It means we can't tell you what you should do personally. We can say we think a company is good or bad, we like it, we don't like it, it's a buy or it's not. But what we can't do is say whether or not it's right for you. So take it in that spirit. This is general advice only. Last thing I'll tell you as we kick off, just to make sure everyone's on the same page, is this is a point in time. This is being recorded at the very, very beginning of April. And so just be mindful of that. If you're watching or listening to this later on, things may have changed for the company. So what the views that expressed now are our best ideas, our best views, our best analysis at this point in time. Right, that's that out of the way. It's important, by the way. That's why I put it at the beginning, not the end. But it's kind of the boring stuff. Let's get on to the fun stuff. And I've got to say, today's company is a fascinating one. Before we do tell you which company it is, I want to introduce one of our key analysts and portfolio managers, Andrew Legget. Andrew, g'day.
Hey Scott, I'm looking forward to finally getting to be able to talk some stocks again. It's been a
I
while.
know, it's been a very long time. If you've been around our YouTube channel or podcast role, you'll know we used to do this. We are bringing it back. It's been a very, very long time coming. Mate, talk about topical, both in terms of share price movement, but frankly, with everything going on in the world, you're going to tell us about a company called Droneshield. And like many companies on the Australian Stock Exchange, it kind of does, says what it does on the tin. But tell us, what exactly is Droneshield?
So yeah, when I'll use some jargon here and then I'll break it down. So
Nice, thank you.
Droneshield, it's a defense company. You can't get away from it. So
Hmm.
as I said, it's a defense company. Droneshield, ASX code is DRO, by the way. Uh, what they do is they offer non-kinetic detection and defeat solutions for counter unmanned aerial systems.
Right.
So there's a lot to unpack there, but essentially what it does is it provides products that can both detect drones and defeat them through a means that doesn't involve blowing them up. And
Wow. Okay.
that's what non-kinetic means. Kinetic bullets, rockets, non-kinetic things such as what Droneshield uses, which is jamming. So that is essentially in a nutshell what they do. And it's a really interesting kind of market at the moment that it's in, I think.
Hmm. We're seeing a lot of drone use reported, particularly in Russia and Ukraine. We're seeing, I was going to say the future of warfare, we're seeing the present of warfare, but unmanned aircraft, unmanned systems, as you say, have been coming into more use for a while now. But the cheapness and availability of drones and the ability to power those up with all sorts of things is an incredible, I will say advance. Advance in technology, whether it's an advance for mankind in terms of warfare is probably a different question. But let's kind of break it down because obviously a business that people, and this has been hot and cold, plenty of people have been talking about, the share price has been all over the place. The future, though, is going to be, we would presume, greater amounts of warfare being fought without the involvement of humans, at least directly in the combat zone itself, those more unmanned, as you say, systems. Tell us, what is the investment case for drone? We'll get to the con, by the way, in a sec. Excuse me. What is the investment case for Droneshield?
Well, you touched on a bunch of the really good themes there. Like drones are not necessarily an advancement. There's far more advanced things that militaries are using these days, but it is an innovation and it's kind of, we see that in Ukraine, which, I think is arguably the world's first drone war.
Right.
And it's becoming an increasing kind of area of focus, and not just militaries, also governments, law enforcement, commercial businesses as well. But we'll focus on the military first, and then we'll get into the latter area. And the thing is, drones are they're an incredibly difficult enemy because they're very small, they're very quick, they can move around, and that makes them hard to both detect because they're quite small and fast, and also defeat. And they can also be operated in swarms. That's something a lot of people might not, but that is a, you know, when people are sending drones now, they're not necessarily just going to send one. They'll send, 5, 10, and you've got to now try and like defeat all of them at once. That's a really difficult problem to overcome. And then you've got the cost. And what it does, it kind of like helps level the playing field a bit, in that you've got this drone that might cost $1,000, and then you can take out using that $1,000 drone assets of the other side that might be worth in the millions and the billions
Right.
of dollars. And also in some areas, like in people like the US Navy has used multi-million dollar missiles to destroy $10,000 drones. Now, even the US military can't keep up that kind of level of financial attrition on the battlefield. So this is a this is a problem that militaries all over the world are using, and they're looking to Ukraine at the moment to kind of see the tactics on both the offense and defensive side. And going back to what Droneshield does, which is jamming technology, that is a core part of what is the layered approach that many experts are considering as the optimal approach, where you have different versions to take out drones depending on how far away. You don't just rely on one single bit of technology. So that's it from the military sense, but the threat of drones goes beyond just the field of war and now becoming an issue like in civilian populated areas as well. And this could be examples such as when terrorists have used drones to take out, to take out oil fields or power plants, critical infrastructure. But also could just be as benign as someone flying a drone too close to an airport, which has happened as well, which has caused, delays because it's a risk to oncoming aircraft. You don't want to get, a drone sucked up into a 747's engine. So this is the other part of the problem as well. And it's slightly different in that you can't use a layered approach in populated areas because shooting rockets at drones when there's thousands of people underneath you going about their daily lives, that's not an option. So the non-kinetic kind of approaches to dealing with drones, it's kind of a necessity in this part. And Droneshield has done that in the past. They've been used in areas like the Boston Marathon, the Southeast Asia Games, the World Economic Forum. So they've kind of got they've got some runs on the board, both on the battlefield because Droneshield products are being used in Ukraine at the moment, and expertise in using it in a civilian setting. And this makes it, I think, a compelling kind of company because firstly, when it's not usual that an Australian company kind of can create this defense technology that is used and accepted around the world.
Mm.
That's, the defense primes, the Lockheed Martins and the like are usually the ones that kind of do that. But also this is kind of a product, an area that might be a little bit on the kind of narrower side for a company that big.
Mm.
And also Droneshield, at least from what I've seen so far, appears to be one of the few companies that are doing both the detection and defeat capability together. Others in the market are either like focusing on one or the other. So that makes it between the real world experience, the which is not just like proven its technology, but also allowed it to forge strong relationships with, key stakeholders in that industry but also, that all-in-one solution. I think that makes it very compelling. And just to go back, this is a problem that is becoming increasingly important, both in war and like it was only a few months ago that reports were going around America of drones just hovering around sensitive US military installations. And basically the US military just said there's nothing we can do about it. So this is a problem that is very current, very important, and Droneshield is one of the companies that is leading the way in this market. And not only has that led to them growing strongly, but also starting to knock on the door, I think, of sustainable profitability. So that's the kind of overall investment thesis that I see for Droneshield.
Nice, thank you, mate. That's the pro column. Again, there's not a recommendation. So let's do the cons. People looking at it thinking, hey, drones are a thing, war is a thing. This company has some technology. The market's probably going to grow. What are the cons? What are the downsides? What are the risks of an investment in a company within Droneshield?
Well, as you know, there's always risks. So I'll start with straight the technology. Uh, War, military technology, it's always built on the same thing. Military one builds a form of technology that gives it an advantage. Military two builds something to try and overcome that.
The
And
proverbial arms
we're
race.
also,
Yep.
yeah, the literal arms race.
Mm, mm,
And this has been seen in the Ukraine as well, where even jamming technology has, ebbed and flow in how effective it is because people have both Ukraine and Russia have come up with ways to try and make jamming less effective. So that means Droneshield's products could essentially become less effective in a battlefield if this continues and if they don't stay ahead of the curve and find new solutions and improve their technology. And if that happens, well, the militaries of the world aren't known for their loyalty to products. They just want whatever is going to
mm.
give them the best chance of winning. So if that's no longer Drone Shield technology, they'll go to something else. Next is regulatory risk. As a defense contractor, Drone Shield is limited to who it can sell products to.
Mm.
It can't just accept orders from anyone. It has to be, you have to pick a side, essentially. The US does have particular power. There have been some sales of Drone Shield in the past that have relied on US approval. That may
Mm.
not always be forthcoming. There's also, especially when we look at things in the civilian area, this is still a kind of emerging area. There's still a lot of regulations that prevent such technology being used, at least in kind of, a major setting. I think that's going to change, especially with, like at least one major drone manufacturer watering down protocols that would previously prevent it from flying in restricted or sensitive areas. So this is something that will have to be looked at and changed, but there are risks, especially with jamming technology, that it could um, unknowingly also jam other signals that you don't want jammed. If you're trying to deal with a drone near the airport, you don't want to accidentally cut off the communication between air traffic control and a plane coming into land, for example. So that's all things that kind of need to be worked out. There's no guarantee that Drone Shield Solutions will be the one that gets to go ahead when regulators do make that decision. And that gets into the next risk, which is the common one with every company, competition. There are a few companies in here, and a lot of them have far more financial resources than Droneshield does, being a relatively small ASX company. Some of these competitors are valued, VC backed by Americans, valued in multiple billions of dollars, and another funding round away from getting another few $1 billion in the bank account.
Yeah.
So those are the core business risks. There's obviously financial risks, being a small emerging company, it's been loss making for most of its history. Kind of needs to keep growing and build scale if it wants to really be a valuable kind of business. I think it can be that, but it's not a certainty. So that's a snapshot of the risks. Like this is not a company that just has the yellow brick road ahead of it. There are some real challenges there.
Yeah, and there's the valuation risk you mentioned. It's not yet profitable, and you're trying to work out how much to pay for that, how much eventually it will make in profitability is really, really hard to tell. So lots of good stuff about the company, some potential downsides, risks, just things to be aware of before you are going to invest in it. Mate, let's round this out. You've given a pretty compelling case for the business. You've also told us why things might not go well, and some of those known unknowns, as Donald Rumsfeld might say, which is probably appropriate given the military context. Tell us about your view on Droneshield. What do you reckon the odds are of it being market beating over the long term from here?
So at the moment, I think, when we record this, I think its share price is like just under $1 per share. So at
Mm,
this, and that's always something you got to take into consideration because even the greatest company in the world is not going to beat the market if you pay a ridiculous price for it.
mm,
I think it can, but I will kind of add a bit of conservatism there in that, you know, yes, it has a lot of big macro themes going for it. And I think it's shown a good track record in being able to kind of take, part of that market. So that's going to be what drives it to being, an outperforming investment in the future. But in saying that, it's not a sure thing. And even if it does achieve that long-term market beating result, it's probably going to be an extremely rocky ride. Like it was only last June, I think, that Droneshield shares were at $2 a share, and now they're at a dollar, and it's been lower than that just recently. Like
Yeah.
this is a company that whose share price there's a lot of sentiment in it, and as such, it's a roller coaster, and that means it might be a little bit too much of a wild ride for some people. Uh, yeah, and that's something to also consider, when thinking about Droneshield.
There you have it. Andrew Legget bringing you a stock in focus Droneshield. DRO is the ASX code. We're back. We're back for stocks. Our second round of stocks in focus. We intend to do this regularly. So if you've just stumbled onto this one, please make sure you like and subscribe if you're watching on YouTube. If you're on the podcast, make sure you subscribe to the podcast feed to get more of these every single week. At least that's the intention. But lots more coming your way. The best way to get it is to subscribe to those various feeds. And please, if you are doing it on YouTube, hit that little bell that tells you when we're releasing new stuff. That's the best way to get it to your inbox or to your notifications anyway, to make sure you don't miss out on anything like this. We've got lots more coming. We're going to do on the YouTube channel at least, Stock of the Month, which is going to be a formal Motley Fool recommendation. We've got what I've been reading. We've got lots of really, really good stuff. So do subscribe to those for me if you wouldn't mind. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Andrew, thank you for your expertise. And until the next one, Fool on.